Before we start, just a quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. Only 2% are subscribed at 1,000 subscribers. I'll be posting a special video. I double-clicked the wrong file on my girlfriend's laptop and everything shifted. My name is Jake and I am 27, and I swear this started as a simple favor. Emma asked me to print concert tickets because her own printer kept jamming. I promised I would not snoop, yet my cursor hovered when that folder name popped up. Bedroom log stared back from the screen, and it sounded clinical enough to feel wrong. I told myself it was maybe a budget sheet or some boring tracker from work. You know that little itch when you absolutely should not click and your hand clicks anyway. That was me watching the cursor open the file while my stomach tightened like I had swallowed a rock. Rows filled the screen in neat lines with headings across the top like a quiet report. Dates sat in the first column, then time, then partner, then a few columns I could not immediately read. My brain tried to make it about meetings or projects or gym sessions, anything except what it obviously was. Then I saw the column titled Protection and another labeled Finish, and that fake explanation fell apart fast. I jerked the trackpad like I could physically shove the screen away from me. It hit me that I was looking at a literal record of every time Emma had sex. The top rows went back far and the scroll bar looked small, which meant there was a lot below. I knew I should close everything and pretend I never opened it, yet my fingers stayed pressed on the keyboard. Looking back now, I get why that moment matters more than anything that came after. Right then, though, I was just a guy staring at his girlfriend's private scoreboard, with his name probably hidden somewhere inside. My chest felt tight, and I noticed how quiet the apartment sounded without Emma talking from the hallway. I listened for the shower and heard nothing, which somehow made the spreadsheet feel louder. I scrolled without meaning to, and the names blurred until a set of initials snagged my attention. There were letters I did not recognize, and then my own appeared in the partner column like a punch. Next to my initials sat a number under rating, and my brain fixated on that tiny score instead of the bigger picture. I did not even check the date because all I could think was that she had graded me. Another scroll revealed more rows with my initials scattered between other sets, like someone shuffled a deck and dealt us together. Some lines had little notes under comments that I could not stop trying to decode in half a second. Good connection sat beside one set of initials that were not mine, and my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. I told myself it was old data, some distant chapter of her life, yet that thought sounded weak even inside my head. I dragged the scroll bar down then up, trying to see where the first entry began and where the latest one ended. Numbers under the date column looked recent enough that my throat tightened again, because this was not some dusty archive. From the bathroom, I finally heard water start running, and that simple sound suddenly started a countdown in my head. I had maybe 2 minutes before she walked back in and saw exactly what I was staring at. I shoved the laptop screen down an inch, then pulled it back up because closing it completely felt suspicious. My fingers mashed keys without plan, opening a new tab and dragging the spreadsheet behind a ticket window like that would help. Even while I fumbled, I kept reading the last visible lines like my eyes were glued there against my will. The bathroom door hinge groaned and every muscle in my body locked as if the spreadsheet had turned into a live bomb. Emma stepped out wrapped in a towel, humming some random melody while my pulse pounded like it wanted out. Done with the tickets yet came from her direction, and I realized my hands were still on the keyboard. Yeah, almost. I answered too quickly and dragged the ticket window forward until it covered every trace of that log. She smiled and grabbed her phone, and I smiled back while knowing nothing about us felt simple anymore. Emma asked if I wanted dessert, and I almost answered spreadsheet. I shook my head, grabbed my glass, and tried to look normal. Every time she mentioned work, my brain swapped in that file instead. Looking back, this was the first night I started lying by omission. At the time, it just felt like dodging a punch I could not see yet. After dinner, she carried her laptop to the couch and dropped beside me. "You good today?" She nudged my shoulder with her knee, watching my face. "I'm fine." I kept my eyes on the TV like it mattered. She opened her email, and I caught a glimpse of that folder icon near the top. My right foot bounced nonstop on the floor and I pretended it was just caffeine. Her fingers moved across the keys and every click landed in my chest. I waited for her to open the file again to confirm how much she really used it. Instead, she pulled up spreadsheets for work and I almost laughed from pure relief. Yeah. Relief lasted about 10 seconds before a new thought slammed into me. If she noticed anything out of place earlier, she was doing a better acting job than me. She closed the laptop, stretched, then announced she was exhausted and heading to bed early. I should have joined her right then and tried to sleep like a normal partner. Instead, I stayed on the couch with the TV running and my thoughts racing. When she called my name from the bedroom, I yelled back that I would be in soon. I waited until her voice faded completely before I even stood up. The moment I knew she was out, I grabbed her laptop again and flipped it open. The ticket site was still on the screen like a flimsy cover over something radioactive. I closed that tab and hovered over recent documents, felt my throat tighten in real time. I knew I was breaking trust twice now, not just stumbling once into something private. And still I clicked it again, because curiosity beat guilt without even breaking a sweat. The sheet opened faster this time, and I went straight to the bottom. These were the most recent entries lined up one after another like calendar squares. My initials popped up among others with single letters for people I did not recognize. There was a column I had ignored before with tiny notes crammed into each row. Next to one of my nights, the note read sweet but clumsy, which landed harder than the number. The rating itself on that line showed 7 out of 10, which suddenly felt like a performance review. Above it, I found another entry with my initials and a lower score and no comment. Further up the list, some other letters carried 8s and 9s with cheerful notes like great rhythm. I do not know if you have ever felt jealous of strangers you have never even met. In that moment, I hated people who were just initials and numbers more than anyone in my actual life. I forced myself to stop comparing scores and focus on when everything happened instead. I scrolled until I reached the first week Emma, and I had started sleeping together regularly. The timeline looked mostly linear at first, one person at a time with nothing overlapping. Then I saw a date that matched a night I remembered very clearly for a different reason. The next line down showed other initials stamped early the following morning like a back-to-back shift. My first instinct was to call it a coincidence and move on before my brain exploded. Instead, I checked the time column and saw our night marked late and the other one marked around dawn. Nothing there proved anything by itself, but it felt like someone brushing past me in a dark hallway. I stared so long at those two lines that the text started to blur. A floorboard creaked down the hall, and I nearly slammed the laptop shut out of pure panic. I listened for movement, held my breath, waited to hear my name or the bedroom door. Nothing followed, so I eased the screen down until the glow vanished and my reflection took over. I knew I had crossed a line that would be hard to explain if this ever came out. I also knew I was not done reading that thing no matter how much I wanted to be. That combination sat with me the rest of the night, guilt and obsession sharing the same pillow. I woke up with my jaw clenched and my tongue sore. Emma was still asleep on her side of the bed, breathing steady. I watched her shoulders rise and fall, and all I could think about was that stupid file. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand and opened nothing, just stared at the lock screen like a coward. Come back to bed, her voice drifted across the sheets, thick with sleep. I froze halfway out of the blanket and forced a small laugh instead of a real answer. Bathroom, I pushed up too fast and almost tripped over my own feet. I knew I sounded off, and I could feel her eyes on my back even with my head turned away. In the bathroom, I sat on the closed toilet and pressed my palms together. Part of me wanted to march right back and ask about the tracker, plain and direct. Another part pictured her laptop slammed shut between us and our whole life snapping in two. I splashed water on my face and decided to buy time, which sounded brave in my head and cowardly in my chest. When I stepped into the kitchen, she already had her mug in her hands. Morning, she bumped my hip with hers, easy and familiar. Morning, I reached for my own cup and missed the handle the first try. Her eyebrows lifted a fraction, then she looked down and stirred like she had chosen not to notice. "You working late today?" She leaned against the counter and watched me over the rim. "Should be normal hours." I poured cereal and focused on not spilling. She tilted her head, studying me like I was an email with a weird subject line. "You seem tense and we did not even check our phones yet." Her smile tried to land and my chest flinched. "I'm just thinking about numbers." The words came out before I planned them. "Numbers," she echoed. Ed the words slowly, tapping her finger on the counter. "Deadlines and budgets." I shrugged and lifted my spoon, hoping the motion would end this route. Her hand slid over my back in a quick stroke, warm and familiar in a way that hurt. Later that day, I sat at my desk and opened another spreadsheet that actually belonged to my job. Every cell on the screen reminded me of hers in a way that made me want to throw my monitor. I kept catching myself checking dates on my calendar, even when I did not need to. You know that feeling when reality looks fine, but your brain keeps circling one weird detail? I pulled up our message thread just to see her face in the tiny circle at the top. Her last text from the night before was a sleepy heart and a joke about the concert. I hovered over the keyboard more than once, fingers ready to type some casual question about her past. Every draft sounded either controlling or needy or both, so I erased them one by one. Around lunch, she sent a clip from a show where a character confessed they tracked everything on charts. "Look, your people." Her text landed with a laughing emoji that felt like a dare. My pulse jumped before my brain caught up, because of course she meant my job, not what she hides. "Data rules the world." I replied with a dumb graph gif and stared at the dots like they might rearrange into her log. By the time I got home that evening, I had rehearsed at least 10 ways to bring it up. None of them survived past the doorway once I saw her moving around the living room. She walked over, looped her arms around my neck, and kissed me longer than usual for a weeknight. My hands landed on her waist on autopilot while my head screamed about rows and ratings. "You free tonight?" Her mouth brushed my ear, light and certain. "Yeah," the answer jumped out faster than my thoughts, pure reflex and craving. If I am honest, part of me wanted new data, something to compete with whatever those old nines were. I hated that thought the second it formed, but I still did not pull away. We ended up in bed quicker than usual, no slow build, just hands and breath and familiarity. Inside the moment itself, my brain quieted more than I expected, like it finally got tired of spinning. I paid attention to everything in a weird, deliberate way, as if I could influence an invisible score. Have you ever performed your own life for a grade that only exists in your head? Afterward, we lay there and she traced lazy lines on my chest. "You okay now?" Her voice sounded softer than earlier, almost careful. "I think so." I stared at the ceiling and listened for any small noise from the other room. I could not stop picturing her getting up later, opening the laptop, and logging what just happened in a fresh row. "Why are you smiling like that?" She propped herself on one elbow and studied my face. "Just thinking." I tried for relaxed and probably landed somewhere near strained. "About what?" Her fingers paused on my skin, waiting. "Us," I answered, which was technically true, technically honest, and totally incomplete. She slid closer and kissed the side of my mouth. "For the record, that was pretty great." Her breath hit my cheek and I felt a small flare of pride. Some pathetic part of me immediately wanted to ask what number that meant in her private code. Instead, I laughed once, short and rough, then rolled onto my side so she would stop reading my face. When she fell asleep, I held still until her breathing evened again. I lay there for a long stretch, debating whether getting up would wake her. The urge to check that document built like pressure in my chest, tight and miserable. Eventually, I slid out of bed inch by inch, moving slow enough to drive myself insane. In the living room, her laptop sat where she had dropped it after work. For a second, I just stood over it, arms folded, hoping self-control would magically click in. It did not, so I opened the lid and watched the screen glow to life. My thumb shook on the trackpad as I navigated to the recent files list. The tracker appeared near the top like it had been waiting the whole time. I opened it and scrolled straight to the bottom, skipping everything I had already seen. There it was, a fresh line with tonight's date stamped next to my initials. My chest thudded in a way that felt way too intense for a simple line of text. The new rating sat right beside it, and the number gave me a weird, petty rush. Higher than last time, not by much, but still higher, which mattered more than I want to admit. Then I saw the comment she had crammed into the notes column, and the air left my lungs. Good energy still in his head. 4 words, yet they pinned me better than anything she had ever told me out loud. That note cut me in 2 different ways at once. She was right about me being stuck up there, trapped in thoughts even during sex. She also had not said any of that to my face, just typed it into her private report. I closed the laptop harder than I meant to and stood in the dark, breathing fast. Back in bed, I lay awake staring at the ceiling again. Every time my eyes drifted shut, I saw those 4 words instead of any memory of what we had just done. Thinking about it now, I get that writing them probably helped her sort through things. At the time, it felt like she had turned me into homework that needed correction. The next morning, I tried a different tactic at breakfast. "So, how many people do you think the average person has slept with?" I stirred my cereal without tasting it. She glanced up, surprised, then blew on her coffee and leaned on the counter. "That is a random question for 8 in the morning." Her lips quirked, but her eyes stayed sharp. "Just curious," I shrugged, trying to look casual, trying not to sound like some courtroom cross-examination. She listed off a couple of studies she remembered from somewhere, rough guesses, national averages. I watched her mouth move and thought about how much more accurate her personal stats probably were. "Why worried you are behind?" She nudged my leg with her foot, half teasing, half fishing. "Maybe I am wondering if I am even on the scoreboard." I tossed the line out like a joke. She barked a short laugh, then it faded faster than it should have. "Trust me, you count." She reached for my wrist and squeezed once, a quick grounding touch. The way she said it made my skin prickle, like there was a second meaning hiding under the surface. Later that week, we were on the couch scrolling our phones. A thread popped up on my feed titled something about people logging their personal lives like reports. I took a breath and went for it. Some people really track everything, right, like full charts on their intimate life. She looked over at my screen, then back at me. "Yeah, I have heard of that. Some even track emotions and moods." Her voice stayed even, but her knee bounced once. "It sounds kind of intense." I studied her profile and tried to catch any tiny change in her expression. "Depends why they do it." She frowned at her own phone, thumb moving faster than before. "So what would be a good reason?" I shifted slightly, my weight pressing into the cushion between us. "Therapy stuff, maybe safety, maybe patterns, who knows?" She swallowed and kept her eyes on her screen. "You sound like you have thought about it." I forced the words out, light, almost playful. "Everyone overthinks this stuff at some point." She locked her phone and looked right at me, eyes steady. "Why are we even talking about this?" Her tone dipped a notch, not angry, just wary. "I saw a meme about spreadsheets and sex. It stuck in my head." I waved my phone as if that proved anything. "You and your memes." She snorted and leaned back, but her shoulders stayed a little too tight. I knew I had brushed against the edge of something real, even if she pretended I had not. That night after she fell asleep, I opened my own laptop instead of hers. I pulled up a blank document and started typing out the dates I remembered from her sheet. Not all of them, just the ones that overlapped with times that mattered to us. Seeing them line up in my own file made the unease in my stomach feel less like paranoia and more like pattern. For a minute, I hovered over our chat with my closest friend. My fingers typed out half a sentence about finding something weird on Emma's computer. Then I deleted it and stared at the blinking cursor, feeling like a complete coward and also weirdly protective. If I dragged someone else into this, there would be no way to shove it back into the box later. Instead, I exported her tracker to my phone from that earlier copy, a quick transfer that felt huge. It sat there in my files like contraband, one tap away, humming at the edge of my awareness. I told myself I needed it so I could look without risking her seeing it open on the laptop again. The truth is, I also wanted proof that would not vanish if she ever guessed I knew. Over the next few days, I started noticing every time she opened her computer. If she did it more than once in a short stretch, my heart jumped even when I knew she was answering emails. Whenever she closed it quickly, I clocked the motion and logged it in my head like some paranoid detective. I hated the way that changed how I saw her, but I still did not stop counting. Our sex life turned into a series of experiments I never told her about. If I initiated, I paid attention to how fast she responded and how present she seemed. I tried small changes just to see if anything shifted, a different pace here, a new move there. Every single time I was half inside the moment and half standing outside it, listening for a silent pen scratch. After one especially good night, at least from my side, I woke up before her with a strange little buzz. I slipped out of bed and checked my phone, not for messages, but for that exported sheet. Anxious as he. I opened it and scrolled until I hit the newest entries. There it was again, fresh date, my initials, another number, another tiny sentence judging something I had not known was on trial. That was when I realized I was not just hurt anymore. I was competing with ghosts and versions of her that lived only in rows and cells. Every move I made started to feel less like intimacy and more like chasing a grade on a test with no clear rules. And the worst part was that I could not decide if the real problem was her tracking or my obsession with reading it. By the end of that week, I knew 3 things for sure. 1, I was not ready to confront her because I still wanted more clarity than I had. 2, the longer I waited, the harder it would be to explain how deep I had dug into her private document. And 3, the next time I saw something I could not explain, I would not be able to pretend everything was fine anymore. The new line popped into her log while she stood 5 feet away. I watched the row appear near the bottom, date stamp from that morning. Partner column held initials I did not recognize, and time read early before work. My throat tightened so fast I actually coughed, which got her attention instantly. "You okay over there?" A cabinet door thudded shut behind me. "Yeah," my voice came out thin and fake, hanging in the air. I glanced from the screen to her back and back again. The cursor blinked beside a fresh note that just said quick, nothing else. I had the exported copy on my phone, but this was different. This was watching her update it in real time while humming under her breath. I scrolled up one slot and saw a line from the same week. Same initials, different day, similar hour, same vague comment at the end. My brain flipped through our last few mornings like cards on a table. One of those days she had kissed me goodbye, then texted later about meetings. Nothing special, nothing off, just normal couple stuff that suddenly felt sharp. I pressed my palm flat against the counter to stop it shaking. "Hand me your phone," her voice floated over from the stove. I jerked like she could see exactly what sat in my files. For the playlist, she held her hand out without glancing back. I unlocked mine with clumsy fingers and passed it over, heart pounding. Her laptop sat open on the kitchen table, screen angled toward the hallway. If she turned around at the wrong moment, I was finished. I could have closed the log right then and pretended I saw nothing. Instead, I stepped closer to the table and dragged the trackpad to highlight that new entry. I zoomed the view until the text filled the screen. "Today, early, unknown initials, short note." The combination buzzed in my skull like static. I knew this was the thing I had told myself I could not ignore. "Jake," her voice snapped from the other side of the room. My shoulders jumped and I spun around too fast. "You want pasta or takeout?" She squinted at me like she could not read my face. "Can you come here for a second?" The words came out rough, almost cracked. She set my phone down and wiped her hands on a towel. "You look like someone kicked your dog." Her steps slowed as she neared me. I did not answer that line because anything I said would spill everything. Instead, I moved aside so she had a clear view of the screen. Her eyes followed my gesture, then landed on the table. For a split second, nothing moved, not even her fingers. I saw recognition hit before the rest of her brain reacted. She reached past me like she meant to close the laptop, then stopped halfway. "How long have you been looking at that?" Her voice came out low, almost flat. I stared at the list instead of her face because I was scared of my own answer. "A while," my mouth picked the vague root even though that helped no one. She let out a slow breath through her nose, not quite a sigh, not quite anger. You opened something private without asking. Her jaw tightened as she spoke. I clicked it by accident once. I tapped the corner of the computer, then dropped my hand. Once, she echoed the word with a short, disbelieving laugh. Then I saw new lines show up that did not make sense anymore. She looked at the latest row, the one from that morning. Her shoulders rose a little, then dropped like she was bracing for impact. What exactly do you think this is? Her eyes stayed on the screen, not on me. I know what it is. My finger hovered above the column labeled partner. The silence stretched while the clock ticked loud in my head. It is a record. I forced each word out steady. Times, people, notes, scores. The last one tasted bitter coming out. And you added a fresh one today, even though you live with me. She finally looked up and met my eyes. I knew this would blow up if anyone ever found it. Her voice shook once, then steadied. It helps me keep track of my own history. She tapped the table with 2 fingers. This is no tea supposed to be about you. It becomes about me when my name is in it. My hand curled into a fist by my side. And when there are other initials sitting next to days that belong to us. Her gaze flicked to the row above the new one, the previous entry with the same letters. Do you know those letters? I kept going before she could answer. She swallowed and took a step back, putting distance between her and the table. They are nobody important. The phrase hit me harder than a confession. Nobody important still ended up in your log twice this week. I heard my voice rise. Both times right after you walked out our door for work. Her face went pale in a way that scared me more than if she had yelled. I can explain the document. She rubbed her forehead with the heel of her hand. The document is not the main problem anymore. I pointed straight at the latest timestamp. That is the problem right there, and whatever you did before you wrote it down. She closed the laptop, then firm, like she could shut the whole topic. My hand shot out and kept it from fully snapping shut. Do not do that. My voice came out sharper than I intended. If we are going to talk, we are going to look at what we are talking about. Her eyes flashed for a second, then dimmed again. You have been spying on this for how long? She folded her arms across her chest. You really want to start with my part? I scoffed, nerves fried. You track every hookup like a report, and I am the one on trial. For my own body, she snapped that out so fast it shocked me quiet. I started this after some really bad years. It keeps me grounded. Her throat worked as she swallowed again. It helps me remember what I wanted and what I did not want. I believed that piece, I really did, but it sat next to a fresh betrayal. I get needing tools. My tone dropped raw because I have my own ways of coping. What I do not get is this week. I opened the laptop again and spun it so it faced both of us. Explain these 2 entries with the same initials while we are in a committed relationship. I tapped the newest line and my nail clicked against the trackpad, too loud. Her eyes filled not with tears yet, but with something like panic. It is not what you are picturing. She moved closer, fingers reaching for my wrist. Then tell me what it is. I jerked my arm away, not ready for that contact. Because from this side it looks like you slept with someone else and then logged it like a workout. She flinched at that last word, like I had slapped her outright. Can we sit down? Her shoulders sagged suddenly, years of weight dropping at once. I cannot do this standing over a spreadsheet like some audit. Her choice of words stung. I pulled a chair back and dropped into it, more from exhaustion than kindness. She stayed standing, hands pressed against the back of the opposite chair. Last week we had that blow-up before your office party. Her voice shook on the word blow. I knew exactly which argument she meant, and my chest tightened in anticipation. I went anyway, angry, and I drank too much, and something happened that should never have happened. The room felt smaller with every word. With who? My question came out quiet and cold, which scared me more than yelling. A coworker. Her fingers dug into the chair until her knuckles stood out. You do not know him. We barely talk outside work. It was not some secret romance. That is supposed to make me feel better. I laughed once, humorless and dry. It happened twice. Her voice dropped even softer, almost fading. The first time that night, the second time a few days later. Each admission landed like a separate hit, spaced just enough to hurt more. That is him in the log. My hand went numb on the edge of the table. Those letters, she nodded once tiny. I wrote everything down because I was disgusted with myself. Her cheeks flushed now, finally. I thought if I forced myself to see it in black and white, maybe I would stop lying to myself. You did not stop lying to me, though. My chair scraped back as I stood again. You came home, you kissed me, you climbed into bed, then you sat here rating whatever you did with him. She winced like each clause hit a different nerve. I kept thinking I would tell you after I got my head straight. You were not straight this morning either, apparently. I stabbed a finger at the newest entry. What was that one, quick before shift, just getting it out of your system? Tears finally broke then, spilling over in a sudden rush. It was me trying to end it, and I ruined even that. I blinked at her throne. How do you end something by having sex again? My brain could not compute that logic. I met him to say it had to stop. Her shoulders shook with each word. I panicked and I fell back into the same pattern, and then I went home feeling sick and logged it again. So your great act of accountability was filling out your little grid after cheating on me twice. My own voice sounded harsh to my ears, but I did not pull it back. Not calling me, not ending things with me, just typing it into your private ledger. I realized I was gripping the chair so hard my hand hurt. She covered her face with both palms and let out an ugly sob. I know how it looks, the words came out muffled through her fingers. It looks like disrespect. I paced away from the table, then turned back. It looks like I am a column you fill sometimes while running other experiments. That is not how I see you. She dropped her hands, eyes red and swollen. You are not one of many, you are the only person I actually love. Everyone writes that in their own defense. I shook my head dizzy. I believe you care about me, that does not erase what you did behind my back. She took a step around the chair, closer, like she wanted to close the gap. Ask me anything about it, her voice steadied in a strange way. Times, places, anything, I will not hide details if that helps you decide. The offer sounded brutal and weirdly honest, but it did not solve the core thing. I do not want a tour. I backed up until my shoulders hit the fridge. I want to know why the log mattered more than telling me even once. It did not matter more. She shook her head hard enough that her hair whipped. It was easier to dump it there than risk losing you in real life. There it is. I let out a harsh sound that might have been a laugh. You wanted me, but you also wanted him, and the only consequence you accepted was adding another line to your record. She frowned like I had twisted her words, even though she knew I had not. I wanted to feel in control of something after years of feeling used. That word hit me sideways. So you used me instead. The thought came out before I could filter it. Her lips parted like she wanted to protest, then closed again. I hurt you, yes, I cannot argue that. I hate that I did this. Silence dropped between us, thick and heavy. The laptop sat on the table, lid half open, the log still displayed. I learned all of this by snooping. I forced myself to admit it out loud. I copied your file, I checked it on my phone, I was not innocent either. Her head snapped up at that. You copied it, shock cut through her grief for a second. You did not just stumble into it one time, you kept a version. I nodded once, shame burning through the anger for a moment. Why? Her question floated between us, quiet and sharp. Because I knew you could change it. I stared at the laptop, not her. I knew if I confronted you, you might delete things, and I wanted something that could not disappear for when you told me I was crazy. Saying it out loud made me feel paranoid and also horribly justified. So we both kept records. She let out a humorless breath that almost counted as a laugh. Mine of my body, yours of my lies. Her shoulders slumped. Congratulations to both of us on being completely messed up. She wiped under her eyes with the heel of her hand again, breathing hard. I trusted you not to invade my privacy like that. Her voice dropped smaller. I trusted you not to cheat, I answered, and the two betrayals sat next to each other between us. Neither of us tried to claim the higher ground after that line. It was clear there really was not one anymore. She moved toward the table and grabbed the computer with both hands. I can delete this right now. She lifted it off the surface a few inches. I can close every file, wipe every copy, stop counting anything. The panic in her eyes said she meant it, even if it was too late. Put it down, my stomach lurched at the thought of losing the proof. She hesitated, then set it back gently, fingers lingering on the lid. I do not want you changing it to convince me nothing happened. I also do not want you tracking me like some ongoing project anymore. So what do you want? The question came out rough, broken in the middle. I opened my mouth, then shut it because I honestly did not know yet. Part of me wanted to walk out and never look back, protect whatever pride I had left. Another part remembered every ordinary morning, every stupid inside joke, every night that felt real. I need space, the words felt like ripping a bandage off the wrong way. Not forever maybe, but definitely not sharing a bed tonight. Her face crumpled at that, like the idea of separate pillows hurt even more than my anger. I can sleep on the couch. She scrubbed her cheeks again, already shaking her head at herself. I will take the couch, I cut in before she finished the offer. If anyone should be uncomfortable in this place right now, it should be me while I figure out if I can stay. She nodded slowly, arms wrapping around her own ribs like she was cold. I will pack a bag, just in case you decide you do not want me here tomorrow. That line sliced rough me even as part of me agreed with it. You do not have to leave tonight. I looked away from her toward the hallway. I am not making permanent decisions in the middle of this mess. But if you go anywhere with that guy again, it is over instantly. I will never see him outside work again. The promise came fast, almost desperate. I will request different shifts. I will document every interaction if that is what you want. The idea of more documentation made my stomach turn, even if her intention was transparency. I do not want more charts, Emma. I just want you not to touch him ever again. She nodded, tears sliding down again, but quieter now. I hear you, her voice barely rose above a whisper. She walked past me slowly, leaving the log open on the table like evidence at a crime scene. I listened to drawers opening and closing down the hall, each sound a reminder that this was actually happening. When I finally moved, I grabbed a pillow and a blanket from the closet. The couch looked smaller than usual, or maybe I just felt larger, full of too many thoughts. I lay down and stared at the ceiling while the laptop screen glowed faintly from the other room. I knew I could get up, close it, maybe even delete the exported file from my phone. I did not do any of that. Instead, I pulled the blanket up and clutched my phone against my chest. The log sat there inside it, silent, complete, waiting for whatever came next. I had confronted her, I had heard her confession, and still had no idea if I was going to forgive her or blow our whole world apart. I woke up on the couch with my neck screaming and Emma sitting in a chair watching me. She had a small bag by her feet and both hands wrapped around a mug. For a second I forgot why I was out there, and then everything from the night before crashed back in. Did you sleep at all? My voice sounded rough, like it belonged to someone older. A little. She set the mug on the table and rubbed her wrists slowly. I did not want to leave while you were still out. Her eyes looked puffy and focused at the same time. I figured we should talk before I go anywhere. The word go landed hard even though she had warned me already. My stomach clenched like I had swallowed gravel and I pulled myself upright. You already packed, I nodded toward the bag near her shoes. Just basics. Her foot nudged the strap lightly as if she could pretend it was no big thing. I called a friend last night after you fell asleep out here. She let out a thin breath through her nose. They said I could stay until we decide what this is now. We decide, not if, when. I hated that I still liked how that sounded even with everything shattered. You really think there is a decision to make? I swung my legs off the couch slowly. Because from here it looks pretty final already. She flinched like I had flicked something raw. I do not expect forgiveness right away. Her fingers picked at the seam of the cushion. I just do not want to disappear without giving you room to ask things. Her gaze met mine for once and held. You deserve answers even if you never want me again. That line hit me sideways because it was both noble and late. What are you doing with the file? I jerked my head toward the table where her laptop used to sit. I moved it to an encrypted drive and locked everything. Her mouth twisted like she hated how that sounded. I am not deleting it yet because it is part of my medical records now. That knocked the wind out of my anger for a second. You really showed this to a therapist? I leaned back and stared at her. Parts of it. She dragged a thumb across her lower lip, then dropped her hand. They know I track and why and how it started, and they know about this mess now too. I never hated nuance more than right there. If it had been just some twisted hobby, I could have written her off easier. Knowing it came from pain and then caused more pain made everything heavier. I still cannot live as a row in whatever system you build to feel safe. You are not. Her voice cracked on the last word and she swallowed hard. I get why that is all you can see though. She reached down and zipped her bag with a small, quick motion. I am leaving this place to you until you decide what you want. She pointed her chin toward the counter where her key ring rested by itself. You are just walking out. My chest tightened again in a different way. Do you want me to fight you to stay? Her eyebrows rose a little, almost daring me. I do not even know what I want this morning. My hand went to the back of my neck and stayed there. I just know I cannot pretend this is a normal rough patch. Me either. She stood slowly and slung the strap over her shoulder. I booked an appointment with my therapist for tomorrow. Her voice steadied as she spoke that part. I am going to tell them everything, including your part with the copy. You can hate me and still be allowed to know I am actually working on myself. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Great, we can both be case studies somewhere. The joke tasted bitter before it fully left my mouth. She grimaced but did not argue because we both knew there was truth in that. Will you at least text me when you choose something that is not limbo? Eventually, I stared at the floor because looking at her hurt. She nodded once like she had expected that answer and already mourned it. Please do not hunt this guy down or anything. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. I already reported it to HR as a conflict I need distance from, and that was humiliating enough. I had not even thought about going after him until she said that. Now that image flickered through my head uninvited, and I shoved it away quickly. If I do anything about him, it will be by quitting my own obsession with the sheet. I met her eyes again and we just stood there in the cramped silence. She stepped forward like she might hug me, then stopped halfway. We both did damage in different ways. Her hands hung at her sides. I betrayed your trust in the worst way, and you invaded my private records trying to prove it. That does not cancel out, it just means we are both bleeding. I hated that she was right. Not equal hurt, not equal intent, but still two lines crossed, not one. You do not need to make me feel better about my part. I shook my head slowly. I'm fully aware I turned into my own little investigator with stolen evidence. She smiled once at that word, then the smile broke. You always had that part of you that needed every detail. Her voice went soft with memory, and I forced my mind away from the good images. Maybe that is why this feels like such a betrayal on both sides. She hitched the bag higher on her shoulder and took a step toward the door. I am not blocking you. My throat felt tight again. She paused with her hand on the handle. If you ever want to ask more about why or how, or what this does to my head, I will answer. If you never speak to me again, I will still know I did real harm here. The door opened with a small click and then she was gone. I stood in the empty doorway for a long beat, listening to echoes that were not there. It is wild how fast a place can feel foreign without someone in it. I walked back to the couch and sat down hard next to the pillow I used as a barricade last night. For the first hour, I just moved on autopilot. I showered, I made coffee, I opened the fridge and closed it again without taking anything. Every small task felt like hitting play on a life that did not quite fit anymore. You know that weird floaty feeling after a breakup where your body does things and your mind lags behind. Eventually, I picked up my phone and opened my messages. There was a text from Emma with a short line saying she had reached her friend's place. Another message from my buddy asking if I wanted to catch a game this weekend. I typed 2 different replies to each on impulse, then deleted them before sending. Instead, I scrolled to the file app and stared at the exported sheet again. It sat there under recent items like a loaded something I kept pretending I would safely handle. My thumb hovered above it and my pulse kicked up. Part of me wanted one last look now that everything was on the table just to confirm nothing else lurked there. I opened it. Lines and dates and letters flooded the screen again instantly. Now that I knew the full story behind the latest entries, the older ones looked different somehow. Less like a mystery trail, more like a map of how long she had been trying to control chaos. That did not magically make the cheating okay. The two realities sat side by side in my head and refused to blend. I scrolled down to the last row that matched my initials. The note still read, "Good energy still in his head." The words punched me all over again. She had not changed anything since the fight. No edits, no attempted cover-up, no extra explanations squeezed in after the fact. Weirdly, that made me feel sicker because it confirmed she accepted what she had already recorded. It was history now, not an active weapon, which meant the only person still clinging to it was me. Without really planning it, I backed out of the document and held my finger over the delete option. I hesitated for longer than I wanted to admit. Then I pressed down and watched the confirmation prompt pop up like one last test. My thumb tapped yes and the file vanished from my view. It did not take the images out of my memory, of course. I still knew about each line that hurt and each score that made me feel small. But at least I could no longer open them in bed and torture myself at 2 in the morning. It was a tiny act of mercy toward myself and maybe toward her too. Right after deleting it, I opened a browser out of muscle habit. Reddit sat in my top sites list because of course it did. I see. Licked without thinking, and the front page flooded my screen with strangers arguing about everything. For a minute I just scrolled as a way to avoid my own brain. Then a post title about relationship trust punched me between the eyes. Comments flew under it from people who knew nothing about the couple yet still had strong opinions. That is when the idea hit me, and I hated it at first. You really want to turn this into content for bored people on their lunch break? I tried to talk myself out of it. You should call a therapist, a sibling, a close friend, anyone who knows you. You should not be asking random users with cartoon avatars to weigh in on your life. But then I thought about how every person I loved already had a version of me they wanted to protect. If I told my parents, they would probably focus on the cheating and ignore the rest. If I told my friends, they might fixate on the snooping or take sides too loudly. I wanted people who did not care how this made me look beyond that one thread. People who would call me out and also call her out without worrying about holidays. So yeah, I opened the relationship subreddit and hit create post. The cursor blinked at me in the title field like it was mocking my indecision. I typed, "I accidentally found out my girlfriend keeps a spreadsheet of all the times she has had sex," and then stopped. Even seeing those words laid out together made my stomach twist again. I adjusted it to make it cleaner for readers. I accidentally found out my girlfriend keeps a spreadsheet of all the times she's had bedroom intimacy. Less explicit but still enough to make people click, I figured. My hands trembled a little as I moved down to the text box. Writing the body was harder than I expected. Every sentence felt like a tiny trial where I had to decide how honest to be. Do I mention copying the file, or do I let people assume I just opened it once? Do I downplay her mental health reasons so she does not look sympathetic to strangers? In the end, I forced myself to write it almost straight. I walked them through the wrong click, the ratings, the discovery of the coworker, and our confrontation. I included my own spying because leaving that out felt like cheating again in a different way. I described her tracking as something that began in therapy without softening the fact that she crossed massive lines. I stopped a few times with my fingers frozen above the keys. Is this betrayal too, posting this online without her knowing? Probably yes in some ways, but I was not naming her or the guy or even the city. I was just another anonymous mess asking for perspective and maybe a verbal slap. At the bottom, I typed the question that had been eating me alive. Is this something people ever actually come back from, or am I clinging to a corpse of a relationship? Also, am I a complete hypocrite for snooping this far even though it confirmed what I feared? I read it twice, then deleted complete hypocrite and replaced it with just hypocrite because I could not handle the extra weight. My thumb hovered over the post button for a long stretch. I thought about Emma at her friend's place talking to someone who did not know me except through her version. I thought about that tracker locked away now, yet still shaping her choices. I thought about the file I had just erased and the part of me that still wanted a backup. Then I hit share. The page refreshed and my story appeared at the top of the subreddit with exactly 0 comments yet. Seeing it out in the world made my chest feel oddly light and heavy at the same time. I had basically handed a jury of strangers the worst snapshot of us and asked them to judge. Notifications started popping in within minutes. Little red dots appeared next to the bell icon, and the comment count ticked upward. I tapped the thread open and read the first response with my heart in my throat. The top reply opened with "Dude, you both messed up bad," and somehow that blunt sentence made my eyes sting. Some people said dump her immediately, no questions, no nuance. Others focused on how invasive my copying was and how they would have left over that alone. A few tried to balance both, acknowledging trauma and control issues and betrayal stacked together. It was messy and loud and strangely comforting in a way real life had not managed yet. Did any of them actually know the full truth? Of course not, and I still let their words into my head because I needed some outside noise. They reminded me I was not the only flawed person doing damage while trying to feel safe. They also made it clear that whatever I chose next, I could not pretend this was a small glitch. Eventually, my eyes burned from reading arguments about my life. I locked my phone and tossed it onto the cushion beside me. The apartment hummed in the sudden quiet, no keyboard clicks coming from the other room. It hit me that for the first time in a long while, neither of us was tracking anything. No lines added to a private sheet. No secret copies stashed away on my device. Just a messy story spilled onto the internet, and 2 people sitting in different places trying to decide what to protect next. I leaned back against the couch and stared at the ceiling, knowing the post would keep getting replies, while the real decision still waited offline.